Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining the Softengine webinar for the year-end closing 2020. I am proud to present our two top consultants, Flaviano and Natalie, who will be able to break down all the steps required for 2020 year-end closing and hone in on two specific categories. I could say more, but I think I can leave it to the experts. Take it away, you two.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our November Live webinar. My name is Flaviano Noronha. I am an SAP implementation consultant for Softengine. Also with me today is my colleague Natalie Conforti. She is also an SAP implementation consultant. Together, we are pleased to present today's topic, performing year-end closing in SAP Business One. Let's get started. Today's agenda will include an overview of the year-end process, following learned and proven best practices and steps to perform these in your SAP system. In addition, we will also provide a deeper dive into the two most requested areas received from our customer survey questions related to your year-end procedures. These areas are inventory reconciliation and running SAP's Pure Dend utility. In addition, at the end of our presentation, we have reserved time for a live Q&A to further assist you. The following graph provides an illustrated view of the three main phases of the year-end closing process. Bear in mind that these processes include a mixture of both business-related departmental processes as well as SAP system-related steps. First phase is a series of system checks. Unique to your company's financial structure and fiduciary requirements, but in general it includes verifying and completing a standard month-end closing process, reviewing account balances and status of open items such as deposits, prepayments, accruals, collections, write-offs, document numbering, open bank statements, etc. The objective is to identify the areas or accounts that will require additional preparation or reconciliation related to your year-end requirements. Phase 2 includes prepping and performing those tasks identified during the system checks, including reconciling and validating the financial results. One of the main areas being your company's inventory. Once comfortable that phases 1 and 2 are accurate and complete, the final phase, phase 3, involves using your SAP system to perform the closing of the financial year. This phase will include reconciliation of your trial balance and transfer of P&L balances into the balance sheet. In the system checks phase, you can use your SAP system to run the open items report and verify each transaction completeness. These include incomplete orders, deliveries or receipts, invoices or credit notes, and other transactions that may be left open. You must ensure that these open items are complete and ready for your transfers. Any unallocated transactions must also be complete and reconciled as such. For example, invoices must have credits or payments allocated to them for full reconciliation. Next, you run the payment wizard in the banking section to ensure that any previously saved payment recommendations not yet executed are revised or complete or cancelled if required. This will avoid leftover open items. Thirdly, but not last, ensure to review and reconcile any balances left on clearing accounts. Examples of these can be any interim account used in deposits or other clearing payment accounts, and GRN accounts from goods receipt in the purchasing processes. Next, I'll hand over to my colleague Natalie to go through the preparation phase.
As part of the system preparation for period end in your SAP Business One system, you will want to update or confirm your period status is set to closing period. Note, typically this is just a system check, as many clients have the posting period set up to automatically change the status on a specific day for the following period. However, since this can also be manually updated as needed, you will want to confirm the status. Prior to closing the year, this will need to be done for each period within your fiscal year. If the status for any period is set to lock, then it will not be available for selection within the period end closing utility, as you will see later in this presentation. Another preparation step is running your customer and vendor aging reports and verifying the totals match your receivable and payable account balances on your balance sheet. As next item noted, and one of our two featured topics for today, is the reconciliation of your inventory, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. The inventory audit report, although multifunctional, is also the report to use when checking your total inventory values reconciled to your inventory accounts on your balance sheet. Item 4, running financial reports, is typically the final or close to final step once you have completed your reconciliations. SAP provides the standard set of financial reports, and these include the balance sheet, P&L, and trial balance. These reports will assist you in reviewing and confirming that the financial results appear accurate and determine whether you are ready to move forward with closing your fiscal year in SAP. Next, I will hand this back to Flavio to provide more detail around the topic of reconciling inventory.
Next slides, we will explore the topic of reconciliation of inventory accounts. We will start by looking at some of the reasons why this is important. Firstly, to compare and reconcile your actual physical inventory quantities and valuations against the inventory general ledger account balances. Secondly, to verify any inventory count discrepancies between your SAP system and your warehouse books. Thirdly, to assist you in investigating and controlling any discrepancies found and make the necessary adjustments in SAP. Fourthly, by running the valuation and audit trail reports, you will be able to review the true inventory postings and their financial transactions created in SAP. Fifthly and lastly, consolidate all of your findings and report comparison results to prepare and post any adjustments to the inventory or general ledger inventory accounts if necessary. This will help you complete your inventory year-end readiness. The next step in the reconciliation of inventory is to decide where to start. We recommend starting with an actual physical inventory reconciliation. This will involve the assistance of the warehouse personnel and will require scheduling and execution of physical inventory counts. In SAP, the inventory counting functionality allows you to issue a request for physical inventory count. This is then followed up by an actual inventory posting adjustment transaction, which will result in an increase or decrease of your inventory quantities and general ledger values. The following steps are based on best practices and follow a coherent structure in assisting you with your inventory reconciliation. Steps 1 and 2. Once the inventory counts are received back from the warehouse, compare them directly to the balances in SAP. Step 3. Review and consolidate all deliveries or shipments that may be outstanding since the last reconciliation. Step 4. Note and address any discrepancies by preparing the correct adjustment transactions, then posting them into SAP. This can be done by the actual inventory posting that follows the inventory count transactions. Step 5. Continue to cycle through inventory counting and reconciliations and make that a habit by preparing and running these periodically as required by your business. The cycle count functionality in SAP can be used to assist in this process. It is important to keep consistency of these processes and ensure scheduling and execution falls within your weekend or month-end bookkeeping process. This will help you avoid any possible surprises at the year-end procedures. One of the most utilized reports and key for year-end inventory reconciliation processes in SAP is the Inventory Audit Report in SAP Business One. It allows you to fully audit post-inventory transactions and compare them against valuation and general ledger balances and break this analysis down into specific transactions for selected periods of time within your financial year. In other words, it will be used to compare general ledger transactions and actual inventory transactions. Please note that this report does not perform any calculations or adjustments and should only be used for companies that have enabled the perpetual inventory feature in SAP. That is, allowing inventory transactions to create postings into your general ledger chart of accounts. This report can also be used to review and analyze individual warehouse postings and perform valuation of a narrower part of the inventory, such as selecting specific warehouses. Let's take a look at this report in SAP. But first, some important information about the selection criteria for running this report. When running this report, it is important to work with the options available for opening balances or closing balances from previous periods. If this is the first time closing your fiscal year in SAP, it is likely that you will have open balances carried over from your legacy system into clearing or offsetting general ledger accounts. One important function of this report is to help you ensure that the inventory balances for quantities and values migrated into SAP Business One matches the legacy system. Let's see how this runs in SAP. Running the reconciliation inventory report in SAP, it's quite easy. You want to make sure that the balances from that report will compare and balance back to your financials report in the balance sheet. How do we do this in SAP? Go into Financials, look for your financial reports under Financials, then look for Balance Sheet. In the balance sheet, you want to select your end of the year period. In this case, I'm going to choose 2020 for the 31st of December. Select an annual report, leave the display report options open. You can choose your local currency. And this display in second column is just a comparative column. You can leave this out. Nothing else as an adjustment or journal vouchers needed to be added here unless you are aware of adjustment transactions that needs to be included in here. If you have used those, then include these options. Once you run this report, you will see your account balances in multiple levels. You can choose level 5 or more if you have this into level 3, 4, or 5, or more even, into your postable accounts. You want to reconcile the balance of these accounts on the inventory section. So you can see here that there are two inventory accounts. One is the finished goods and one is the returns that add up to this value here. Next, we want to run the inventory report. Under inventory reports, look for the inventory audit report. This report is your actual audit report that should translate into the value as per the account balances in the balance sheet. Again, I can choose here a system date, in case there's different dates. You have the end of the year period selected, the 31st of December. You can leave these options for items filtering open. GL accounts, we're not selecting any, we're also leaving all or including all of the GL accounts. We're selecting and including all of the warehouses. We're selecting the display by items. Very important here is to click this option to display the opening balances for items or accounts with no transactions. Click OK. It says this operation is going to take a couple of minutes to an hour, depending on how much transactions are there. Let's continue. And there you go. So the balance, the ending result of this audit report run matches my balance sheet as per the same amount as indicated on the screen, 7,102,047.39. So you can see that the two match. End of reconciliation. Next, I'll hand over to my colleague Natalie to go through the final step in closing the period end in SAP Business One.
The third and final phase for today's presentation is performing the year-end close. This phase includes the second most requested area related to performing the year-end in SAP, which is running the period end utility, and I will illustrate this in SAP. Prior to running the period end utility, you will first confirm the period statuses, as we discussed earlier, and if the new fiscal year has been created. This step, however, can be done at any time, including during the system check phase reviewed earlier, since you can control your posting period status, and SAP is an authorization-driven system. Creating the new fiscal year earlier in the process should not be a problem. As many of you probably already know, creating a new fiscal year It's quick and easy in SAP. Next is running the period end utility, which is the function in SAP to roll the profit and loss totals to your balance sheet. And then we finish up with the year-end process by locking the posting periods. Let's jump into SAP and review how this is done. To verify the status of our posting periods, we're going to navigate to the main menu, choose the administration module, system initialization, and then posting periods. The posting period screen appears here with the list of all the posting periods in our system, and the period status is listed right here. To change the posting period status, you can use the golden arrow to open up the detail for the individual posting period. Look for the period status field, change the posting period, hit update, and OK to return back to the posting period. Also within the posting periods is this checkbox field right here, next to the words automatic change of period status to closing period. This is the area I referred to earlier in the presentation where you can set up when SAP will automatically change the period status to closing period for you. So based on this setting right here, this is saying on the 1st, change the previous period to a closing period. So on the 1st of December, SAP would change November's period status to closing period. If you do not want to use this, you don't have to. You simply would uncheck this box. In addition, to close our year, we also want to make sure we have a new fiscal year created. Most likely, you probably would have already created your new fiscal year, but in this case, we don't have our next fiscal year created, so let me show you how you do that. I'm going to navigate to the bottom right and choose the new period button. Here's where I'm going to enter the period code, so I'm just going to use the year. I'm going to use the name and keep it also the year. However, you can enter something else there if you'd like. The sub-periods, I want to create 12 periods for my fiscal year, so I'm going to choose months. And SAP automatically populates the date range for my posting date range for the next year, my due date, and my document date. If for some reason you need to extend, for example, the due date out, you can change these dates. The start of my fiscal year, because I'm on a calendar year, is January 1st. And this is fiscal year 2021 that I'm setting up. If I say add, all the periods will get created in SAP. So as you can see now, I have my 2020 year, and I also have my 2021 year. To close out of the screen, I'm just going to say OK. And I'm done. Next, we're going to actually look at the period end utility. So I'm going to navigate to Administration. This time I'm going to look for the Utilities folder. And I'm going to open up Period End Closing. Here the Period End Closing screen selection criteria screen appears. You're going to select all your accounting areas, so all your GL accounts, your PL accounts are listed up here to the upper right. Let's roll up to the highest level. However, if you needed to select particular accounts or you wanted to look for a particular account, you can drop this down to your posting level and it'll show that detail. Again, you just click the X and it selects everything. Next, I'm going to enter the period. So I want to close my 2020 period, fiscal year period. In the From field, I'm going to put the first period of my fiscal year, so in this case, 1/2020. However, in this list, this is where you want to verify that you have all 12 periods listed here. If you do not, that is because in the posting periods, we missed changing the status to closing period, and the period status is probably set to lock. So you'll want to fix that before proceeding on. Then the 2 is the last period of the fiscal year, so I chose 12. You're going to enter in your retained earnings account. You're also going to end in your period closing clearing account. Next, I'm going to hit execute. This will bring up all the account details that are going to be part of the roll up to your retained earnings. Obviously, you'll have a lot more transactions listed here, but at the bottom, you're going to see a total, and this total should match your profit and loss. You're running your period and close for the first time for the current fiscal year. So this is the first time I'm running it for fiscal year 2020, and my balance is showing down here is $11,416.81. So if I want to verify that amount, then I'm going to go back to my menu here, find my financial module, scroll down to my financial reports, financial folder, and I'm going to go ahead and run a profit and loss. If I look on the P&L results here, my profit period is reporting $11,416.81. So I am in balance. So next, I'm going to enter the date that's going to be part of the journal entry that is created. So I'm just going to enter the last day of my year. And you want to be sure to select all the transactions. So you can just click on the column header that says approved. Again, this is the first time I'm running it, so if I'm in balance, I'm going to want to select everything. If you're running it because you made an adjustment or something, then you may only have a few accounts listed here, and you would obviously just select those. So I have two options at this point. I can save this selection criteria, which will create a draft report in the system that I can refer back to. So if I'm not quite ready to run this, it looks okay, but I thought of something else I wanted to check, I can say save and use this blue arrow to go back to this main screen and cancel out of the period and closing. When I'm ready to go back, so administration, utilities, period and closing. Once I open the screen, I can click on previous report. And as you can see here, it is showing me the selection criteria that I already saved. Once you actually do run the period and closing, the previous report will no longer be available because you'll be done. So if I'm comfortable with running the period end, then I would just hit execute and let the system go through the process of doing the journal entries to clear out all the P&L accounts and roll that total to my retained earnings. That is how you run the period end closing. Next step to what we recommend to complete this process is to return back to your posting periods. Go through each of the periods and then set the status to locked. You will need to do this for each of your periods. That completes this demonstration on running the period and closing and our presentation for today. Thank you for your time and attention. Next, we would like to hand it over to Ashley and open it up for questions.
Softengine, solutions that impact the bottom line.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Q&A portion of our webinar. We seem to have a couple questions that our attendees wanted to have answered. Let me go ahead and get those for everyone so we can talk about what you're interested in. So it looks like, Flaviana, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. And I have Natalie as well. So one of our first questions is what happens if I close the year and I have more transactions to process?
So
Can
Natalie,
either
do
of
want
you
to-
attest to that?
Hi, everyone. This is Natalie. I can answer that. So you can run the utility more than once. So you would just reopen the period, enter your transactions or adjusting entries, and then run the period and close again.
Awesome. Great. Let's see. Any other Q&As? So we have Maria who's interested in where would you do CPA's final year-end adjustment that are normally done about 2 to 3 months later?
Again, that's kind of the same as running the utility again. So you could close your year, lock down all your periods, and continue, doing your current year work. Then, as you said, 3 months later, you get these adjusting entries for your previous year. You would just go back, open up probably your final period, do your adjustments, and rerun the utility. Lock it back down, and you're done. So you can rerun this as many times as needed.
Great.
So just in addition to that question there, this is Flavio here. We obviously, when you're running these reports, you're going to see a lot of options with add closing balance or opening balance for the fiscal year. So if you had already closed the entire fiscal year prior to that, and you say you don't want to reopen the last periods to do adjustment postings 2 or 3 months later, what you could do is make let's say an initial posting to the first day of that fiscal year as an adjusting transaction continuing from the previous fiscal year. So in that case, you're now going to end up with a closing balance plus an opening balance to add up to your reports if you want to run reconciliations or let's say verification through trial balance, the P&L or balance sheet later on. It all depends on how you want to deal with these transactions. Is it a final posting year-end adjustment that I made, or is it a closing balance that I may have brought into this new fiscal year as a carrying forward balance onto this new year? So it's really down to you how you run your accounts. Okay.
That's great, Flavio. Thank you so much. And it looks like we have one more question. Is there a way to roll back or reverse the year-end close?
You could manually cancel the journal entries, but this is pretty tedious, or can be pretty tedious. So there is no automatic rollback feature. So we recommend having a backup prior to running the period and closing.
Always nice having a backup. I can attest to that personally. All right, it looks like, thank you, Victor. Victor says, great webinar. So thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Flaviano. Thank you, all of our attendees who joined this webinar. As we mentioned, we will have a live recording of the Q&A as well as all of the slides that they presented here today. Natalie, Flaviano, I guess we can sign off now. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Have a great evening or day. Bye-bye.